a meeting of the RTM's Town Government Structure and Administration, better known as TGS&A. This is Thursday, February 7th. This is a special meeting, which is designated as not one of the regularly scheduled meetings, but because of the timing of the matters we have to discuss, we decided to call a special meeting this evening. Characteristic of special meetings is that only the items that are on the agenda are to be discussed. That's just the way it works. If you have a regular meeting, you can bring up a topic, but we'll confine ourselves to the items that are on the agenda. So welcome. You all have an agenda which we'll look at, and behind the agenda there are some other handouts which we will discuss. Also, you have two other packages. One has a lot of red printing on it, and so thank you for Don Orjeski, who helped get this red printing done. And another document is the same material with the red lining out of it, with it sort of, as they say, cleaned up.
Thank you.
Also, before we start, we'd like to send our greetings to Joe Michelli, who can't join us this evening. He has heart surgery, open heart surgery, elective, and we wish him well.
You're here.
I'm going to hold off on reviewing and approving the minutes of the regular meeting because we're at 6 members and absent the clerk. So we will just defer that until next time we get together. That would be reviewing and approving the minutes of the 22nd of January. Which brings us to item 2 on the agenda, reviewing the issues voiced at last night's meeting. John, I know that you were there sitting in the front row.
Second.
Do you have any,
I might have been called on to speak
if I
if I
had
had to.
observations about the meeting that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I thought, so, Mr. Chairman, I've been at many public hearings over the years, having been RTM member of Board of Ed. I thought last night's was very well run. I thought the audience was terrific. I've been at public hearings where people with opposing views have been hooted at, and I thought a lot of respect was shown by everybody for both sides, and I think the audience did a terrific job last night. I think that for the most part, it was a very pro BYO ordinance sentiment on the crowd, and the reasonings varied. There was a range of reasons presented. But at the end of the day, I think most of the people were in favor of the ordinance. There were some, and particularly some, for example, Susan Cater of the representing the Chamber of Commerce expressed the concerns of the particularly the smaller merchants in town with the respect to the bags and having to provide whatever I can't recall exactly what her points were. She wasn't able to finish. We had a pretty strict 3-minute timeline for speakers, and for the most part that was enforced. Bruce Orr of the Board of Finance also spoke against it, and Andrew Millar, who's an RTM member, District 4. There were some of the town merchants spoke. They didn't speak against it per se, but they did indicate some concerns, particularly smaller ones, about some of the technical provisions in the ordinance. I know Diane Brown, I know her because my wife does a lot of business with her, expressed concern about Brown and Company on Post Road. She expressed some concerns about the weight of the paper bags. She does provide paper now, but she said it was going to be a bit of a hardship for her to have to change bag vendors. So there's some details in that aspect that some of the vendors presented. But that's about all I would report at this point. You want to follow up with something?
The chairman, the three chairmen were up front. I was up front, as well as Mac Patrick from Public Health and Safety, and then the meeting was run by Monica McNally. I thought she did a good job of keeping things moving. Because I also have been at meetings where they almost started to throw chairs.
Yes.
There was none of that last night. It was good. Other views from the meeting. Did you enjoy yourself? It was short. I think we were probably finished by 9:30.
Yeah. Similarly, I guess the only thing that I noticed that you started to comment on was the smaller retailers, was the cost and potential change to a new vendor and who that vendor would be, and whether there would be constraints to who they had to use and what the minimums might be. Someone did speak out and say that, they were able to find small batch minimums. At what cost? I don't know. Whether the 10 cents or whatever would cover that, I don't know. But probably some more detail would need to be fleshed out for them to make them more comfortable. But overall, it was extremely positive, I thought.
Did you have a chance to watch it? Oh, you were there.
No, I was not there. I saw the last 45 minutes. Does anyone know offhand if the Darien Sport Shop bags are compliant?
Oh, no.
Now, everyone reuses those because they're good bags.
How are you?
Hi.
Glad you're here. Now we know we have a forum. We're a little bit.
I don't know if those are made of recyclable content or not. But it seems
I
to be
think
those.
some of the concern was not just, it was also the mill on the bags. One of the retailers spoke out that their bags were 4M instead of 12M, and they didn't know what it was going to take to get them to the
On
next step.
the plastic bags?
On the plastic.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Did you have a chance to attend?
I did.
You did? I thought I saw you there.
Yes.
We're welcome, and we said we're following the agenda that was published. We have to do that at a special meeting. But once into
thank
the
you.
agenda, it was sort of free form. What are your impressions of last night? Had you attended public hearings here before?
I actually haven't been to a public forum before, so that was interesting to watch and to attend. My feelings overall were it was great to see the public interest. Clearly, the public supported it. I was surprised about the negative response. I felt like it wasn't necessarily accurate. I remember one person said there were only 3 purveyors that provided the bags necessary that would fulfill their requirement. And I was like, how could it be that only 3 companies had the ability to make the bags that would fulfill the requirement of whatever the mills was? I can't remember what the specific mill rate was, but I thought that was unusual, and that the trash was coming all from Asia. I thought that was a little bit unusual as well.
That's actually true.
Are we talking about the ocean of plastic?
We were all over they were all over the map last
Yeah,
night in terms of what was the issues, but
Yeah.
for example, there's no question that, for example, that giant, whatever you want to call it, blob in the Pacific Ocean is coming from Asia, and it's because
It is in Asia, yeah, but I mean, I think
And
there's
actually
a
part of
significant
the-
amount
part of
plastic
the-
that's in the sound that is.
Yeah,
No, but-
you can't say that
but
that's
people
from
were
Asia.
people were bringing it up, and so I mean, that was one of my problems with it, was you had different arguments, and then you had different people using this answer to attack that argument or this to attack this, and they weren't
It was disparate, yeah.
there was a sort of disconnect on that.
Sounds like the
But
caravan.
they came out.
Well, while we're talking about types of bags,
Yes.
this might be a good segue into the differences between this.
Well, we're not going
And
to,
what was-
Can I-
it would be good, but I
can we
want to
ask
stick
a-
with the meeting
a
first
question?
before
Okay,
we move
okay.
on.
Yeah, can I ask the question on the concern about the mill of bags? So they wanted to have a plastic bag?
They had one. It was, and I don't know her name, the owner of the Helen Anson.
Right,
Boutique.
but it sounds like she was concerned about finding a vendor for a 12 millimeter or more bag, so she still wanted to have a plastic bag, so.
It sounded like that.
Is that a plastic bag?
What? The one
Is that
she
plastic
showed?
bag?
The one she showed?
Yeah, was that?
Was it a recycled plastic?
Oh, that was it. You're right. So
With the handles?
okay. So thank you. I'm sorry. It's not that it was a plastic bag. It was what is the definition of a reusable bag.
Right.
So this is only
they
4
were
mil.
right. So
Okay.
that was the thing. I'm sorry.
We
Versus
also
12.
go off into the weeds on one topic, which is the thickness, the mill thickness of a bag that's prohibited. It was proposed as the number 12 mil as a target, and other communities have used that. It's of particular interest to us because in Greenwich and in Westport back in 2008, and Greenwich last year, passed a plastic bag ban. Not as complete as the one that we're considering. It just banned the plastic of below 3 mil. So that's, I don't have examples of it right now, but it's still a pretty flimsy bag. So if you go shopping in Westport and your product is delivered to you in a flimsy bag, even though Westport has outlawed plastic bags of below 3 mil. So they have bags that just slightly above that.
3.5.
Which is what the ladies were
Same
concerned
thing
about.
as, I can't speak authoritatively of, excuse me, my error, Stamford. Greenwich is at 12. Stamford passed their ordinance last fall at the 3 level. So that's the question. Do you honor the number of the spirit of legislation? So the discussion last night really wasn't informed of that topic. Like, I'm using a plastic bag, I have to get rid of it. Yeah, but if your plastic bag is thick enough, it doesn't fall within the legislation.
What's a
So it's an
Palmer?
open topic.
How big is a Palmer's bag? How thick is that? Not the reusable, but
The old brown ones were probably, they had a better plastic one since they switched about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Those were probably 12 millimeters. Those were pretty substantial.
examples.
And then they got,
Yeah, I guess we don't have the
I
examples.
believe they got biodegradable ones, which are much thinner.
Well, Benny, did you have a chance to see it on TV?
No, not at all.
It's up there. All 28, roughly 28 speakers. We think 23 were in favor and 5 had some objections. Not that the 5 were diehards, but they were pointing out some items.
are they
And
going
did very
to?
well.
Is there going to be like a list of issued to who spoke?
Yes. Our colleague committee was running the event, was Public Works. They're meeting tonight, and their clerk was recording who spoke and some notes about what they said.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of a segue. People who have been writing in emails to the address at the town clerk's office. As of this evening, every letter that has been received is up on the net in the cloud, so people can look at it. And what I'm anticipating is people who talked and then gave a copy of their remarks to the clerk. We will shortly get a copy of that and throw them up in the cloud as well. Right now, it's only the emails that are in there. For the listening audience, we have a page back here, a couple pages into our agenda. There's a page that looks like this, a fairly dense page. This was given out, good evening. Glad you're here.
Observer.
This page was part of an announcement. So it gave the elements of what the legislation was looking like. And then on the back of it, on the back of this handout, which Donna printed up 200 copies of it, and we got rid of most of them. I think we had about 20 or 30 left. So that means that we had about 150, 160 people there. On the back of that announcement was this page, which reminded people that if they missed making the testimony and submitting their remarks for the record, they could send it into the email address, which is Darien, RTM, at darienct.gov. It's written down here. any correspondence received before March 1st will be duly noted and posted up on the website. And at the moment, we're up to date, except for the written testimony sheets of paper that we need to get and scan and put in there. The bottom part of this handout explains how to get into the cloud, where that information is being posted. In addition, in the cloud is information about other communities' ordinances, primarily the Connecticut ones. And then there's links to the general nationwide bag reference sites, as well as a folder of correspondence, a folder of Connecticut state materials, as the legislature is meeting now. There are about 6 or 7 different bills have been proposed. They haven't been acted on by the committee, but by the Environment Committee, nor reached the floor of the Assembly. But we plan to just have a general reference point for those. So anyone can go onto the state's website and track bills. They do a very good job of it, showing when the committees, when the public hearings are, and what the adjustments or amendments are as they go through the process. So later on, in a few weeks, the state website will be very useful. Right now, it's sufficient to know the number of the bill and what material is available. Quite often, it's just a few sentences, as the representatives are allowed at this point to put a piece of paper in with a few sentences. You can get a number on it, and then later come back and fill it out. So there's a lot of that going on, and we looked at, and it's about 6 or 7 bills up there. Our representative, Terry Wood, introduced a bill a couple of days ago. I don't have its number, but it will be up on the website. Good evening.
Oh, good evening.
Glad you're
Is
here.
it all right to sit here and wait till 8 o'clock?
This is TGS&A, one of the committees of the RTM.
Oh, well, I'm waiting to see about my parking ticket. This isn't where I go.
We're waiving it.
Thank you.
Anyway, so this was part of a handout last
Sorry.
night, and again, we believe that there were about 160, 180 people there. There was a group of high school students that were there, and they waited for their colleague to speak. And as soon as she spoke, then they all, headed off because they had homework to do. But it was nice to sit. It was very well done. All right, any other remarks about last night's hearing before we go on? Well, then we might talk about some of the issues addressed in the drafting of the bag ordinance. Among the remarks that we received, starting again with John, were there any specifics that you heard among the testimony that would give us some guidance in the actual drafting of the legislation? You notice the way I asked that question? Yeah, kind of a spin on it. But did you hear any specifics?
Yeah, but I didn't write them down, to be honest. I mean, again, it came down to specifics about the thickness of the bags, and that was probably the one issue. I mean, the Helen Aniston bag and Diane Brown's comments, and I forget what the gentleman from the toy box, he had made some comments.
He said his paper bags were not recycled,
But they were recyclable.
recyclable.
That's what he noted, yeah.
And before we pass an ordinance, let's look at all the options of plastic and the different types of plastics, and it was more a researching comment.
Well, I have a question, being relatively new to the process. Our charge is indeed to craft the statute or the ordinance. How is it that we're given the message of what the ordinance is supposed to say?
Well, it's an unusual situation because of the advocacy group that had brought it to our attention. And they brought it to the attention of the selectmen. And the selectmen felt that it was a good idea that the RTM have a public forum and discuss it and have the issue dealt with. I represent a town meeting. They know very name, we're a town meeting, but we are the representatives of the town of Connecticut. The Rules Committee of the RTM, back in November or so, said to the selectmen, you don't really have clarity on what is being proposed. The selectmen met a second time on the topic and sent it over to the RTM and says, you've got to deal with this.
Okay.
There are a couple of issues that we wanted them to clarify, which are still hanging out there, but they said, all right, let the RTM work that out. As far as what we have here as a work product that we're working on, it didn't appear out of blue sky, but we have a template that the environmentalists use in various communities as they lobby and urge communities to pass the legislation. That template is not necessarily crafted to the town of Darien. So what we will review shortly is a work product that is a combination of a gift template mixed with what I call Darienization. There's probably localization, and some tucking and fitting, which we'll see, and this is what we have on the table.
Which leads me to a more fundamental question.
Good.
Is it our charge to ban plastic bags? I mean, that's what we're looking at, period.
Our charge is to present with our colleague committees, is to present to the RTM an ordinance what they can vote on.
Okay.
We had this discussion
It's really
5-6
excellent.
years ago,
You want to tell them the 6-year-ago story?
and I was on the committee back then, and what we had a discussion about the ordinance. Yeah, we're basically going to give the RTM something to consider, and the charge that we get really comes from the Rules Committee. I would argue the selectmen's charge to the Rules Committee has been fairly broad, other than they don't essentially. And I've got the minutes of the meeting that they sent it over, and it's essentially consider a ban, but we would not support anything that would require the town to spend any money on it.
Okay.
So, for example, one of the issues that we're going to have to deal with is compliance and who's going to enforce it. And Mrs. Stevenson made clear we're not going to hire somebody to do it. So things like that. But I mean, we're really just. But the question that came before the committee last time was, are we voting? We ended up having 2 votes. One was a vote on, is the wording acceptable? And then the second vote was, do we support the ordinance? Because there's, in other words, and I can be very candid. Last time I was not comfortable saying that having our chairman, at that point it was Sarah Seeley, who later became the moderator, having her get up and say that we had a unanimous vote in favor of this ordinance wording, and then that implying that we all supported having the ordinance in the first place.
Because you supported the wording, but not necessarily what
If you're going to have it, this is adequate wording, but I don't want to
You want to
have
have
the ordinance.
It's a fine point and an important point, and one worthy of a cookie break to consider.
I
If we just sort of pause, get your chocolate chip cookies,
Yes,
and proceed.
we're all-
In terms of wording, it's a lot easier to just say to ban plastic bags than to ban some plastic bags. If our charge is indeed to ban some plastic bags or ban plastic bags.
And so that kind of goes back to my question of, they were concerned about millimeters, but it was millimeters of the reusable bags.
Then
But-
it wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much the actual bags that they're giving out. They're not trying to find a way to make thicker bags so that they can still keep giving them out.
But the
So-
bags that, like the Palmer's or the Stop and Shop, plastic bags that, when you go up and right now you check out and they say paper or plastic, and,
Those-
those are the ones that they're after.
Yeah,
And then
no,
what they're
no,
trying to do
I'm-
is so the discussion was, I don't think any of the merchants who were there were trying to find a way to skate to be able to find an acceptable
Plastic.
plastic
It's a
bag.
yeah, it's a closure.
Unreusable one, so to speak.
So then to Rob's question, why do we need to have a certain thickness? Why would we not just say ban plastic bags?
We don't
At this
as of
situation.
this,
Yeah,
but we have a thickness for what they want to define as reusable,
yeah.
which,
Oh, okay, all
You
right,
could,
thank
technically, you could go take a Palmer's bag, the plastic bag, and bring it back and use it again. There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
right, but it has to be able to carry 22
No,
pounds.
but the question is, why don't we ban all plastic bags?
Your
A
own
reusable
bags.
bag is technically a plastic bag.
Not as we,
So
not
is this
is
defined
proposed.
No,
Here,
but you
as the
didn't, that's not
checkout.
the question you asked. You asked, why don't we just ban all plastic bags?
Well, I didn't say why don't we just ban them. I'm just saying, are we charged with banning them or banning some of them? I'm not holding an opinion on what we should do.
No, I know,
rather-
but I
this
heard
is
the
a-
question,
Yeah.
why
We
don't we?
keep hearing, this is our job to write the statute.
Well, it's and it's a fundamental question, and it's good. This legislation, ordinance, is more complex than the one we considered 6 years ago. And in many people's memory, that 6 years ago was like yesterday. So I think there would be a reluctance to take up the same legislation again. This is different. It was presented to us by the I won't say lobbying group, because they're enthusiasts,
Advocacy group.
champions of banning plastic, but doing it in its way that has been done in various locations in the country, in such a way that the major objections just to banning plastic are addressed. Because the environmentalists have discovered fairly quickly during that first round of discussions that if you ban the plastic bag, it's going to drive everybody to paper, and paper has its own problems. So this has this is a new approach. So we were charged by the selectmen to consider legislation that would take that approach. Now, down in Greenwich, when they met on a similar situation, on the floor of the RTM, the night of the operation, they had a big discussion and cut out the regulation of the paper. And so Greenwich has a bag ordinance, but it is only to ban plastic. And it's working out. It's been.
Yeah, can you
I have a
clarify?
piece of paper, I don't know how
Okay.
long it's been in effect, a couple of months.
But, so they are not mandating any particular kind of paper bag, 40% recycled, et cetera, in Greenwich? They are just
No,
saying,
they have a mill, that they banned below a certain level.
below 12.
Paper?
Frankly, I'm a little bit caught short. I believe
Okay, I can-
it's 12. Because why do I believe that?
I have
Because
some notes.
Stanford is the outrider and did 3. So
We
that
talking
applies
paper or plastic?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is,
plastic.
No, he's talking
We're
paper.
talking mill rates of plastic.
He's
well,
talking paper.
my question, you bring up the point is, well, if you ban plastic bags, then you start using a lot of paper, and there are environmental costs of that. So my question is, now here, we are still suggesting paper, they can charge for it, it's 10 cents. Did they do that in Greenwich, or did they also?
The minutes of the Greenwich meeting show that the legislation came into the RTM with a charge of 23 cents. There was an amendment to knock that down to 10, which passed.
Okay.
So you're sitting here with the ordinance of 10, with 10 cents per paper bag. And
Excuse
then
me?
another amendment came
I
through,
think that it's a 10
which
cent
knocked out the
bag.
rest of it.
I think it's a 10-cent bag. I don't think it's a 10-cent paper bag. I think it's a 10-cent reusable bag.
Oh, that would be unheard of to me.
Yeah, no,
I don't know that.
Because those are usually $1,
It's
$2.
10
Yeah.
cents for the paper, yeah.
Okay.
I can't.
But are the
speak
paper
authoritatively,
bags-
But I'll put in a
Okay.
reference to our cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are the
Greenwich ordinance.
are those paper bags that we're paying 10 cents for in Greenwich, I know it would be in Darien, are they 40% recycled material? Is that mandated in Greenwich?
Well, it's very much the same template.
Okay.
That they were
Okay.
working with.
They have some, I know Greenwich is also sunsetted, but I think it
They do that.
expires in
They do
2013,
that.
2023.
To my knowledge, Darien has never done that. If Darien passes something, it's passed, it sits in a book like that. That is the ordinance, it's right there.
It is
And we're free to
Yeah.
go and modify it, change it when we feel the need for it. Greenwich has a much more, has a different way of looking at things, and I know that there's a couple pieces of key legislation that they've sunset. Or
Well-
they put the sunset clause in there. Whether we will do that or not, I don't know, but if we do, it will be the first time ever that we've done that.
Frank, I don't want to steer us off topic, but we're talking a lot about this 10 cent. Is there any concern or any feedback that we've gotten that the 10 cents may not be going directly to the merchant? Is there any, did we get past that issue yet? I know that was something that was getting researched on a meeting I missed. I'm only asking because when you said, were there any other issues that came up last night? The only feeling I got, and it wasn't any question, no one raised their hand and said, I want to make sure I'm getting the 10 cents, but if that didn't go in there, I would
I
see
can
that
answer
having
that
an
one.
impact,
Again,
so.
While a question like that might be a free-form question, I want to remind our viewers that this is definitely topic number 3 on our
Okay.
agenda. We're not in free form here. but we
Okay.
can
So we will get to
talk
that.
about good issues like that.
Okay,
The issue of whether I think we covered this briefly last time, and it's an open question with our town council
okay,
as to whether the 10-cent charge could, in the future, be the topic which would take the town of Darien to court. And the town of Darien could be assailed over applying a tax to the merchants. And we could all say, oh, no, it's not a tax until we're blue in the face. But our town council is saying that this possibility could happen. And therefore, he's expressing caution. I will say that since we met, the language that we will see in the red line version has been strengthened to include remarks in the text that we will shortly look at that indicate it's a fee that to be kept by the merchant, and to kind of tamp down the possibility that it'll be a tax. Nonetheless, town council says the possibility is still there. You can't do everything to prevent the possibility that the town will be sued over imposing a tax on merchants.
thank
Now,
you.
balanced off against that is the fact that other communities are doing it, and you have the discussions about little Johnny's neighbors rode their two-wheel bicycle on the I-95, why can't I do it too, They did it, why can't we do it? And so there's a certain amount of that. As a matter of fact, that's a segue to some research that was called for.
I didn't get a chance to.
Some
I
research,
emailed it
and
to you.
thank you for your reference to
Thank
the
you.
Forbes article. That Forbes article was really very good. Why don't
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about what you found about other communities who have done this?
So a lot of other communities have banned the plastic bag. And what they did was also implemented a 10 cent or sometimes 20 cent fee, not a tax, because it does go back to the retailer. It doesn't go to the state because it's not technically a tax unless it goes to the government. So it wouldn't be considered a tax. And so a lot of places have done it and have done it successfully. Some have done it without a tax or without a fee, rather, and there haven't been any lawsuits to my knowledge. So,
Well, I appreciated you doing that. I took that information from Forbes chart. Oh, I wish I had the exact numbers here, but there are about 350 communities who have acted on it.
yeah.
Now, I put the chart in Excel, sorted it around, and started beating it up, And it's about 150 communities have applied the fee in 9 different states. Now, like 22 states have taken some form of legislation. Within the 22, 9 have done the fee. And within that, a lot of them are California.
Yeah.
70 some of the number.
The state.
Are communities all up and down.
California.
No, I mean,
Washington
the state
State
took
is
it, you
also
said.
big.
They've done the banned plastic and a fee kept by the merchant.
No, but the state did it.
The state passed,
Because the state, that's the
Enabling-
whole issue. The issue is, if the state says we can do it,
this is what
we
they
can do
do.
it.
The state passes enabling legislation, making it legal
Okay,
for the community to go and do it.
that's the whole issue.
And that's what we're missing.
And several states have passed legislation making it illegal for the towns to do it.
I guess where.
Not,
Exactly.
well, it's surprised, a couple of
It's-
surprised in
it's
Michigan is
appropriate.
one.
Really?
Yeah, they're not all in the South.
Okay.
Pennsylvania passed one, it was vetoed by the governor, so it's kicking around.
Interesting. There was a discussion last night, and it did come out that the average cost of the bag is 14 cents, so the merchant would still be out 4 cents a bag, but there's, just put that was one of the facts that came out last night.
You got us off on a couple of good topics, which include why are we, let's walk it back a little bit. Why are we doing this? And what have we been charged to do now that we have doing it? The selectmen did, the Rules Committee initially sent the issue back to the selectmen for clarification. It didn't work. They sent it back to us again anyway. And so the degree of detail has been left up to the RTM. And so now that's us. And so we are dependent on doing research and mixing our efforts into coming up with a good piece of legislation. Where John and I remember is that 6 years ago, like yesterday, there's an effort by the committee to prepare a proper piece of legislation as opposed to what the members of the committee would vote for or not. So it may be that, as you can see what will happen here, you can have a person of goodwill and of good spirit mixing their effort to make this a nice, good, sound piece of paper, and then turn around and vote against it.
Right.
That's what happens.
That's-
And so as long as we recognize that, and as a matter of fact, the minutes from our 2012 meeting, which are up in the cloud, because I wanted to find them because they're a good read. Now, this shows you how, if you do this, you have too much time on your hands.
No, it means you're thorough, it means you're thorough, and we appreciate it.
And do another load of laundry or something like that. But if you do get around to reading those minutes, and you kind of understand how, it will give you understand how things work, because each of the 3 committees presented a favorable report, yes, we should, it's good, and then there's a minority opinion from each one of the 3 that says, yeah, we don't think this is good for a lot of reasons. And so as a result, the overall vote that evening, and the RTM was in a grumpy mood that evening because there had been some other issues that they caught off, and nobody was really particularly happy about it, but they voted the thing down by approximately 46 to 36.
So it was close, because I think we would do well to recognize that environmental sensibilities are different today than they were 6 years ago.
Okay.
But the other thing is that anything that goes to the RTM is subject to be amended, as Greenwich did.
Right.
So, for example, they could decide, like, not to get into the details, but would pick the fee. They might say, we'd take the fee out, or we'll double the fee.
Count on a long night, is that what you're?
It's possible,
Yeah.
it's possible. Although you never know, you never know. It's one thing I learned a long time ago, don't try and predict what the RTM's going to do.
A couple of years ago, where there was the ordinance that had to be tightened up if it snows, you have to shovel your sidewalk.
Right.
Yeah, and everybody was in a bad mood after that discussion.
So you remember how long it took us to talk about so the moderator could move the meeting in case it snowed? It took like an hour.
It's fun. RTM as you all are discovering, it's a very pleasant, cordial group that does business. If I may bring your attention to item 4 on the topic, on the agenda, results of research conducted. I think we may have touched on that, but for the record, let's talk about the first topic was the definition of terms. Heather, why don't you bring us up to date on what you did and what the results of that are?
Sure. Well, we split up the U.S. and used this wonderful website that has tons of bag ordinances there, and kind of went through and compared it to what we had and looked for definitions that maybe we would want to incorporate, or something that was defined a little bit more thoroughly than what we had, or was a little bit clearer. Largely, I didn't find much that was materially different. I think there were some things like we have in 2.2, we have both checkout bag. Checkout bag means a carry-out bag, and a lot of the ordinances just use carry-out bag. It kind of feels like, do you really need 2 terms to explain one thing? That just seemed like maybe a simplified way of referring to something. Again, not like super strong sort of things. Nonprofit was defined in theirs as well, although I'm seeing that nonprofit is now out of the list of businesses, so I'm
Up for discussion.
looking forward to that discussion. So, but in case that is something we want to keep in, that would be useful. There were quite a few that included compostability of the recyclable bag. But the ladies, when we asked the folks that had brought this to us, they were saying that, and I'm going to paraphrase and keep me honest. Sorry, Juliet, if I misparaphrase you, but that what is compostable is kind of gray. It's not really super clear, and it isn't really necessary on top of already the requirements and the specifications that we've given. So I think those are the biggest things, and again, nothing too major.
I'm glad you took do we have a minority report?
Well, I look more at specifically what are they trying to ban, around on the eastern half. It's still somewhat of a nascent process, this idea of banning plastic bags. And you go back, and the early towns were like Westport. They were at 2.25 millimeters.
Yeah.
As you move forward, it's either they're thicker, which is like 4 millimeters. I didn't have my micrometer handy, but I guess that's what you use to measure these things. And then,
Are you kidding?
I think I have something like that in mind.
As we move along,
Yeah,
it'd be great.
I still know how to use it.
And go to some of the high-class boutiques. Buy something, get out, and then measure the bag.
Yes, I'll volunteer.
That's great.
But what we're seeing now is just banning plastic bags, as far as I can tell. And then they have standards for what's reusable. But in some cases, people don't want plastic reusable bags unless it's the recycled plastic. That's okay. And so you get into all these things, which is why I come back to what do we want to do.
Well,
I don't know that the idea of plastic as a reusable bag is something we really need to define, as long as we have defined what a reusable bag is. It has to hold 22 pounds, you have to be able to use it 125 times. Or
the last
225
meeting, I was
times.
calling to the attention of BYO people that, I was asking, why is this in here? And I felt very justified in asking a question. But over the last week or so, I've kind of come around to the fact that it's good to have some illustration. Now, town council may say that has no place in an ordinance, like the sky is blue, we should put that in there. But at the moment, the pendulum could swing to just say, go ahead and leave that definition in there.
You know, we can fly spec this thing a lot. I mean,
We
the
will.
truth is, I use
We will.
reusable bags. I don't think I use them 100 times. They get kind of chewed up, and you know, you get new ones when you go to a convention or something, and you just, or occasionally I'll forget them. I'll buy new ones at Palmer's. So, and they have certain weeks at Palmer's. If you spend $100, they give you one.
Well,
I have a whole set.
I think there's a certain
Well, it's
amount,
only certain weeks because I'm like, where's my bag? You know.
a certain amount of public education is needed
Yeah.
as this goes forward as to what some of the bags are that are excluded, to save the embarrassment of someone getting up on the floor of the RTM and saying, we can't pass this whole ordinance because my dentist's little bag that they give me toothpaste in isn't included. And so in other words, if they don't, so in paragraph 2-10, there's all sorts of exceptions listed. And if people don't know that those exceptions are listed, then they will come up and embarrass themselves by checking. Now, this I thought I heard that the dry cleaner bags. Now, if you get your dry cleaning bag, there's this big plastic thing on there.
I did see last night, someone
And-
suggested you
and-
bring your own garment bag.
And
No, they mentioned that
We didn't pick
They were
it
just
up.
saying it's an
have them.
Yeah, they're just saying it's an
Oh.
extra thing you could do, even if we
I
excluded
see,
them
okay.
from the ordinance. There's things that we could do to go above and beyond.
What was interesting, they said the cleaners have them if you ask for them.
Yeah.
They'll do it.
So as we progress over
Maybe
the
probably
next
I
couple
wrote that down.
I was like, what the call them for?
as we progress over the next couple of weeks, I would invite members of this committee and the viewing public to look very hard at the section which lists the exclusions. But maybe there's a sentiment that something's being excluded that ought not to be excluded, like double negative. So the dry cleaning bag is in there, and I think the dentist's bag is in there as not being affected by this legislation. There's also a phrase about transportation of hospital waste. I don't think we have that, but in case we have a hospital, we get that excluded. Anyway, the list so far, I'm very glad that you looked at it and looked at the comparables and did not come up with adds or deletes at this
I
time.
think that's, yeah.
At this time. It's an open topic. But the list is fairly complete, and it does exclude things that is problematic. If somebody gets up and makes a speech about a dentist bag, head out. Okay, now other research. Vincent, I understand you had a very good visit with person to person.
Person to person,
Bring us up to date on that.
well, person to person doesn't sell anything. They use only reused bags and packaging. Their concern will be, well, when plastic bags become scarcer and scarcer, and there'll be less baggage for them to reuse for their clients. But on both the nonprofits that I saw, I also saw this thrift shop. There's just a general willingness to do whatever the ordinance says, and they'll adapt, which is pretty much what.
Actually, person to person got up and spoke in favor of the ordinance last night.
Yeah.
They said they went for 100,000 bags, right? Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, in both cases,
Sorry.
there's a willingness to adapt, whatever it is. The GCA thrift shop is more of a commercial establishment in the sense that it does buy bags and it does offer them to their customers to take away product. And so they're going to see what else everybody else does.
Yeah, because person to person talked about using a recycle bag, getting them from, they said, like Skip the Plastic or someplace like that, getting a first batch and then requiring their customers to bring it back. And if they did not bring it back, maybe give them one more shot.
Yeah.
And after that, they said they would have to come up with
Whatever they're gonna-
how they were going to
Yeah.
handle it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
but
that
their
that might have
intention-
been some thought that might have given after my speaking to
Yeah.
them, but they were saying something about educating their clients to bring their own bags and to reuse and then at the DCA, one of the women was is British, and she kind of
Carol.
comes back saying, in England, we we all bring our bags. Nobody uses.
When we have a chance to look at the text, the definition of business establishment,
Yeah,
Heather picked up the fact that a business establishment, this, and this, and we took out for discussion, not-for-profits.
Yes, I'm interested in this guy.
This is a little bit of a strategic decision to take it out so that someone would not stand up with the RTM and make an impassioned speech about what wonderful things person to person does, and by enacting this, who's messing up their social mission. Well, you know, so in other words, if they do repurpose some flimsy bags, if they are come to get some flimsy bags to give their clients some food,
yeah.
fine.
Well-
The bag is out there anyway, and because they do repurpose.
Right, well, I mean, this ordinance does not ban reusing bags.
Well, the way the template came into us,
Okay.
it applied to not-for-profits.
Well, no, but let's back up to the way the ordinance is going to read. If a customer comes in with a bag, any bag,
The cardboard box.
cardboard bag,
Okay.
or a flimsy 3 mil bag,
It's not an issue.
it's not an issue.
It's not part of the environmental emphasis. Like, you got a box, bring a box.
This is about merchants.
It's to prevent the merchant from aiding and abetting.
It's, right,
It's not about the
okay.
Well,
customer.
but,
So
But-
person to person is more about reusing bags that are
but so if you remove nonprofit, so is the intention that nonprofits are not part of this scope? Or is the intention that you took that out, understanding that it says any person or business that sells or provides merchandise? So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be profitable for it.
Right.
So is that the reason we took it out? Okay.
Well, if you move further in the paragraph, it says this shall not include, but it says sales by nonprofit organizations.
If person
So-
where we need to sell something.
Well, they're not
They
not
don't-
selling
they don't.
anything,
That's why the
but that's why
contingent thing.
I'm not sure that that's accurate, because it's, if you want to exempt person to person,
You're not
you
doing
would
it.
say
Well, then are we,
items provided by nonprofit.
Well, person
And
to
are we
person is telling
trying
me
to-
not to exempt them.
yes, when they're not concerned about it, and they stand up to say
Yeah.
that they're not concerned about it, and they support this.
Well,
I-
that's the background, and thank you for making this visit.
Yeah.
So we had research on the actual items, we had research on the communities, we had research on our not-for-profit. So thank you for doing that. Item number 5, consideration of a draft of the proposed bag ordinance in recognition of the issues described above. We have two little packages. One's 9 pages long. I think the other one's only 7. The one with red is what the attorneys will call redlining. You can identify what's been added and what's taken out. And when you then collapse all that, then the document only becomes 7 pages long. So that's what the difference in size is. So you can see, if we just
Time out. So who did this?
who did the redlining?
Yeah,
I did.
okay.
I did it for our use tonight. And our use in general, all our papers are public papers. This is for our use. It's not particularly, exclusive really, but it is, what is likely to be distributed is the consolidated group, so that our colleagues in Public Works and Public Health and Safety will have something to work with.
So
This
is
is
it,
for the redlining's for our reference to see what was coming and going.
not to jump to 6, but, so the way this is gonna work is that we'll do a draft, give it to them. Because I'm kind of curious where do they give input, or do they just
Basically, yes.
sit there and look at it and vote and say yay or nay?
Basically, yes. It's
Yes.
the
It's an essay question.
The camel is a horse designed by a committee, And so getting the input from the different committees to kind of come together and get into a document will be like threading the needle over the next.
All right, so they're gonna read it and kind of go like, maybe you could
I don't
tweak
like
this.
this part,
I
yeah.
don't like that part.
Tinker with it. Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
Add this.
that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, no, I just was curious if that was the
If
process.
they rubber stamp the thing, then it's no
Then they
fun.
do it.
It's no
That's their call.
Let's just walk through the reds just quickly. We will have to go back and do something else before we get, the whereases at the beginning, quite frankly, they're purloined from Stanford. And we ought to have our own set of whereases, but when I sit there and look at them, I figure later. Somebody else had to. We may come back to that and make that a little project for somebody. You'll notice in section 1, purpose of the red line, help defray the incremental cost of business. This was added in an attempt to, not an attempt, this was added to lessen our town council's concern about the tax issue. To spell out what was going on. Our definitions on the next page of the different types of bags are enhancements of the other material. Down in the third page, item number 2.1.
Sorry, you're on the
It's
third
hard to
page
read.
already?
It's midway down the third page. Yeah.
Or are we not going through the second page?
Yeah, if you have anything you want to talk about, of course.
So do we need to take out nonprofit? Again, to the conversation we were just having. What are we trying to exclude? Who are we trying to exclude?
Person to person.
But person to person doesn't want to be excluded.
They currently have no need for it, but in looking down the road, if they do, I wouldn't want our legislation to balk them in some way.
Let me understand that again.
But
What is that?
this also
Currently,
means,
based on your interview,
Yeah.
they have no problem. In fact, CCMR gave testimony last night that
Yeah.
they're all in favor of banning plastic,
Yeah,
and they've explained the whole thing. The thought behind taking that out is to goof-proof ourselves in case the situation changes. They begin possibly to sell something. They don't sell anything right now, but that may be in, who knows? And because there's a who knows, and they do no harm. In fact, they really help the community. I wouldn't want us to do anything that would be viewed as to crimping their stock. If they want to hand out a plastic bag, fine. Because the plastic bag has already been manufactured, it's been repurposed by someone who gave them the bag, they should be allowed to give the bag out and be done.
But
That's why, Heather, I'm suggesting that we take it out.
but
We don't
currently,
get involved with it.
as it's
not a major
written,
thing.
then the Darien thrift shop is also exempt.
Yes. That's same.
And to Vince's point, they purchase plastic bags.
a thrift shop does.
Yes. So is that what you're saying, is that it's okay for them to continue purchasing plastic bags? Because I don't think that's
I
great.
think that we are in enough of a difficult situation for merchants in town. There's no use to soaking a sharp stick at the not-for-profit charitable organizations as well.
I guess I'm just, if they're telling us it's not an issue and they'll adapt, then I don't see why we are choosing that we need to do something different for them.
Yeah, because I mean, I sense from the DCA that, look, we're not in favor of selling plastic bags. We do it at the moment because that's the alternative we have. But if they want to be mixed in with everybody else.
Because there's this pressure, this incredible pressure you're putting on me. Put it back in.
Well, no, but what if we deal with this one thing at a time? I know we don't want to, we don't want to fly spec this now, but if our main concern is person to person, in the last sentence, which was added, this sales by nonprofit, why don't we call it distribution of goods without charge by nonprofits? And then person to person is covered, right?
But
Now, if we want to talk about the DCA, we could probably, we can leave the
Can I make a
nonprofit thing in there.
suggestion? I think you ought to write an ordinance that achieves what you want to achieve, and don't try and cover one entity, because frankly, the person-to-person, could disappear in 5 years.
That's true.
Or a new nonprofit could emerge somewhere else. And, I think crafting something for person-to-person is a very short-term thinking. I think you should come up with an ordinance that makes sense, and then let if you think that you need to have broader terms to enable nonprofits to operate, and person can choose to say, we're going to abide without it. I don't see the point in making, crafting something for something that's, for an entity like that. It'd be one thing if we're doing it for the schools or something, which is, if we don't have schools, we're probably not going to be here. But if it's something like that, I just kind of question why we would not simply do what we think is the appropriate, either yes or no, and just let it roll.
Here we go. Now, you also had, thank you, you had suggested for another change of phrase in here. When you were saying it, I thought it was good. And if you would mark it on my copy there, I think we can. I can see what it is you were doing. And
Okay.
sorry, but I would prefer to just leave nonprofits back in and not try to do anything different.
I've got that to deal with.
Okay.
And you had something else down there.
Well, I just said items provided free of charge by nonprofit. I'll just write that. And
So again, we're adjusting this specifically for certain nonprofits in town. I just don't.
We're putting not-for-profits back in.
Yeah,
Where it had been taken out.
but then down at the bottom, you're saying accept these.
well, I'm saying, what I would say is, if you're not charging money, you're not collecting a fee, and we're not banning bags for those purposes. And I don't even, we can say by any entity.
Well, that's what it said. So, without the last
Well, it says the
new
word
red
sales.
section.
Well, a business establishment or nonprofit entity.
Yeah, business or
That
nonprofit.
That sells or
entity.
provides
That sells or
merchandise.
provides, yeah,
Well, if you're a food bank, you provide merchandise, but you don't sell it.
correct.
So
That's the
I'm
or.
thinking that if you don't sell it, you can't charge a fee, and therefore are not,
But-
you don't fall within the purview of the ordinance.
But this is talking about, okay, so go with me here. Isn't this talking about, this is a business establishment, so they're talking about if you give a plastic, or you cannot give a plastic bag, is basically what we're saying.
If you're selling the stuff that's going into that plastic.
Or
bag.
providing.
Well, that's providing is a word I have a problem with, and that's what I'm saying. You want to fly spec this and go through it word by word, because providing is right. You're absolutely right.
But
And it's-
again, back to, we spoke to them and they said it's fine. I just don't understand why we're working on an issue that's non-issue. So that's, am I the only one that's feeling like this?
I see what you're saying, but I also
I
see
see
what
both sides.
Frank and John are saying in that, these things are forever.
And the DCA does sell, right? So it's.
They do
two
sell.
separate.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, you know what, everything's free at the DCA today, they can use the plastic bags.
And sometimes you end up a year later kind of like, what did that say? And it's,
Yeah.
which is why I could see his side. It's kind of like, what do they mean? I'm not taking a side.
No, I'm not
Simply
either.
saying-
I don't, we're just trying to write this
It's not our
up,
job,
but we're
it's
trying to
part of
figure out what it is that we want to
Okay,
do.
one of you two blink, so we can move.
I'll blink.
There'll be future, there'll be
I
other
don't
things
have
that
that
we can
strong a
talk
feeling
about.
about it.
Give this one to Heather.
I blink. All you have. Because it's not, it's fine. All good. So
Without
put,
this.
take this out, and we'll put
Yeah, put not-for-profit
nonprofit.
Just leave it, yeah.
Well, I mean, what if
The
you,
first
here, I'll get wild.
There you go.
What if
Go
you-
for it.
What if you
Out of the
were,
box.
you established a club, and you paid a fee for a club, and you said, your daily fee is $100, you can come in, and then we'll provide you with something, here's a paper bag. I mean, in other words, you're providing, it's not a sale, it's,
You can't figure out every scenario. You're right. You can't.
it's too far-fetched for this.
Well-
I'm just saying.
You just described Costco, didn't you?
Well, you still gotta pay Costco extra. And then you can't get a parking spot anyway.
It will be interesting to see if the other two committees,
Yeah,
Trip-
it'll be
triple
interesting to
it.
see where it
if
goes.
they don't,
But
if
the
they
other
don't,
thing I,
it's fine, but if they do, then we'll have a good discussion, well, the discussion will continue a little bit.
I'd wonder if we couldn't help the conversation in terms of the merchants and perhaps the nonprofits. If we were like, here's some suppliers and this is the cost of bags that fit this requirement. Just, because I appreciate it, at the same time, I appreciate the goodwill, but,
Our job is to write the statute.
okay, going on, moving on,
That's our job. We're
moving
not.
on.
Now, anything else on page?
Sorry, you wanted to go to
Anything
page
else on
3.
I was on page 3.
I mean, I don't want to make the distinction. I mean, it was apparent to me with DCA and with person. One deals with donated everything, and the other
Results.
resells. It may be donated, but they do sell. So the DCA does consider itself, well, it is a nonprofit. I would call it more of a commercial establishment, if you want to make that distinction, than less of a.
No, it's not we're tax deductible. If you rent the house, you don't get a tax deduction.
Uh-huh.
My wife rents the place, I know.
Further down on page 2, you'll see some new terms: environmental compliance officer and environmental compliance hearing officer. Now, the words environmental compliance officer is an arch term, because we had the bag warden, we had the term bag inspector. And we kicked it around a little bit, and we came up with a very gentle term, which is environmental compliance officer, which is the possibility that straws or paper cups or everything, something like that, is ever subject to regulation. The environmental compliance officer can take that under their wing.
This is
It
2.5
says
here?
here that they volunteer or appointed, we were all volunteers, but appointed by the selectmen. In the, as we will see a little bit later under the procedures, if violations are reported, then the compliance officer can visit the violator and see if there really is a problem there. And as we will see, the first situation is a warning. And then if that's not dealt with, then they come back and then you can write a fine. One of the sticking points that we had with the Board of Selectmen when they asked us to look at this, we really wanted them to sort out, before they gave it to the RTM, the issue of can a non-town employee write a citation. The implication from town council is, yeah, they can do that. It's okay under Connecticut statutes. We don't have an example of that, because people writing citations in town right now are the parking officer, the animal control officer, and I think the building inspector and zoning. And there may be others, but those are all town employees, and this would be a first that we know about. Town council is interested in this and is working. It will work with us to get this sorted out. So we don't have to take a deep dive into this particular topic yet because it's so pending. But there's a difference between the person who goes and inspects and writes a ticket. And then the person who got the ticket finds that they want to object to it. Well, they can't object back to the same person. You've got to have another person, it's called a hearing officer. The hearing officers are fairly common.
Okay, as an aside, a lot of towns have this enforced by their health department.
Yes.
So,
Yes. By one of our kind of ground rules, not official, we could violate this too. I mean, we could write this so that a town employee would be involved in all this, but then the selectmen would follow it. You know, it was sort of an understanding that we would undertake this
okay.
on the
Understood.
basis of not using town resources. Hence, we have to do this. So there you see that in the red print there. That was not in the template.
So where are we? Is this that 2.5?
We're just fighting our way through page 2.
Still two.
Page 2
It's
still.
Twitter
Still on
live. But we can do this. We can-
Yeah, but I mean, when it's in red like that, it means it's out, right? The 2.5?
The black print that came from the template that
Yeah.
we started with. The red is information that has been added to this thing.
Additions or
okay.
deletions.
Except red that has a line through it.
Red with
Something
the
that was
line
removed.
through it is out, red with the line underneath it is
There's a lot of red, there's a lot of red.
Yeah, a lot of red, okay, yeah. Yeah, I see red through it.
So we will hear about this environmental compliance officer and hearing officer in a few moments, as we now get to page 3.
By the way, just so you know, I just pulled up the state statute that you referenced, and it says, the chief executive officer of any such municipality shall appoint one or more citation hearing officers other than, that's hearing officer other than police officers or employees or persons who wish citations to conduct the hearings authorized by this section.
Normally thought of as a police power. It is a police power to write a citation. But to have the power to write citations by non-town employees is
No, actually, that's the hearing
that
officer.
we will work out.
That's the hearing officer on 2.6.
They're two new people. One is the inspector, if you will. And then if the person who receives the ticket needs to complain to somebody, well, then the selectmen appoint a hearing officer. They do that on blight. And they,
Correct.
I was going to ask you on the blight
on
ordinance.
taxes, when your assessment goes up and you want to object to it, come down in a little room here somewhere around here, and the hearing officer hears you. That's a civilian.
Like the woman with the parking ticket.
Yeah. I don't know what that.
Well, she was
At
at a
8
hearing
o'clock
of
in
some
the
sort.
evening.
Yeah,
Eight o'clock in the
You
evening.
know? Well, or she went home because John absolved her.
Now, down in the middle of page 3, you've got topic 2.12.2. You'll see a funny thing, which is 4 stars in AAA and 4 stars.
Hold on, I'm sorry, Frank. At the top of page 3.
2.12.2.
Yeah, we'll take a cookie break.
Well, maybe, I'm on page 4. Okay, never mind. My main question is on page 4.
Okay.
So
So the first time we see this little stars business is we went through the document and took anything that is like a quantitative that needs to be discussed outside of the structure of the ordinance and left it blank. Because I was afraid I'd go back here, I wouldn't find the blanks. So I made something that would be easily searchable, 4 stars and a couple of letters and another 4 stars. So global searching in place, you can find it. AA is the first one, and that's the mill size. Now, it was 12, but, it's up for grabs. You'll see the AA referenced a little bit lower. Now, the topic 213, written notices, again, town council has some observations as what, the second line of the sent to the owner, an agent, and tenant, and/or a person in control. He has a problem with the and/or. We'll get that sorted out when we get down to the midst. You looked uneasy.
Well, I'm still uneasy back here. I mean, I don't know how specific we're getting tonight, but this brings me back to what a reusable checkout bag is. Because a reusable checkout bag can be plastic if it's 12 millimeters thick. And in truth, there are reusable bags that are woven plastic, that are quite strong and may not have that kind of thickness. I think they do. I just think if it's reusable and you can use it for 125 uses and it carries 22 pounds, it's a reusable bag. And if it's a plastic checkout bag, it's a plastic checkout bag, and we all know what that looks like.
Well, I am hardly one to cite precedent in an argument, because it's like your mother saying.
What's important?
It's like your mother saying, just because, you know, just because. But I will say that this language is found quite frequently. And why it's 125 carries, I don't know.
Rob, let me ask you a
But that's
question.
part of
Well,
the-
I'm okay with 125 carats.
Well, in this example of the different specificity.
Rob, let me ask you a question. Can you wash a plastic bag?
You can wash anything.
Okay. Because I mean, maybe I'm stupid. They don't tell you anything about what it has to be made of until it says, or if it's made from plastic, has a minimum thickness. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, all right, maybe I'm stupid. So, essentially, I hear what you're saying. In other words, if it does all these things,
It's reusable.
I'm sure there'll be a hit squad from BYO coming to my house tonight, but
Yeah, me too.
because there is something, as I recall from our last meeting, there was something they were saying about escaping. They're trying to keep this from getting. In other words, there's a certain direction they want this to go, and maybe that the minimum thickness got there.
Yeah, I was on their case last meeting, to why this paragraph was in here if it wasn't. And then I kind of come around, as I've just indicated, but as far as I know, there's only one reference to reusable checkout bag in section 4.2. So in that, the phrase reusable checkout bag is used in the ordinance elsewhere than it needs to be defined, and that's where we get into this elaborate definition. In that, it's sort of a coin of the realm, or whatever, it's accustomed to have that. I didn't get hung up on it, because it's a definition it's a description. It's a description that may be useful.
Okay, good.
And it may, you know, who knows? May our colleagues may put up a fuss about it, and we'll deal with it. What else? I get down here to the charge. Section 5. By the way, we saw the words reusable checkout bag used in 4.2. And I'll do a search to see if that phrase comes up elsewhere in the document. If that would be the justification for you. All right, the charge paragraph is sort of the meat and the potatoes of the controversial issue of whether the merchant can charge for the sale of and keep the proceeds.
And whether it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can see that the paragraph, because of the red lines, has been enhanced. The first paragraph, that is new, and it's not highlight charged, but it was very well phrased to address some of our town council's concerns. So I like that, but as he has reminded me, he's not entirely off of his position that the town may get sued. So he will probably say that at the RTM meeting. Say that essentially this legislation goes forward and is up for a vote by the RTM, someone will say, well, what does the town council think about this? And he'll come over to the podium and he'll make a very nice speech which says, he's going to say that he has some concern. But among us and for the viewing audience, his concern has been narrowed, but it's still there. We're his client. He advises us about whether you always take advice or not. That's another matter. As you know, all your clients always take your advice. Okay. At the final part of the environmental charge will be Oh, okay. The charge of the stars and the BBB, so much cents for each recycled bag. Now, we know that the stars, BBB there in section 5A, that was, you can see it was 10 cents. But for purposes of discussion over the next couple of weeks, we'll leave, as some of these other things, leave them blank. It doesn't change the structure of what we're doing. It could be 12 cents, it could be 9. So for purposes of moving the discussion, we left, that's a BBB. And then C and D are at the end. There is in the template, it says, it was the charge would be increased by 5 cents every 3 years. It's a controversial topic.
I have a real problem with that.
So you may see, I know that people who are on other committees also have a problem with that paragraph. May go.
Well, I'm okay with the increase, just not,
I am not here to defend this.
in perpetuity is just a very
Oh my
bad
gosh,
way to
it
write
could be the
it.
national debt eventually.
It could be, yes.
Well, and I haven't, I will say, I haven't seen that phrase in other legislation. It's a nice idea, but the idea may not go, may not.
I think it's a good idea for the foreseeable future. I mean, you know, you give them a nickel in 3 years and maybe another nickel, but you just can't reuse it forever.
May we agree to take it under advisement?
Yes.
Violations, here in the violations section is the procedure to be followed by the environment compliance officer. And there's some new writing there that issues a notice down, and this is a notice of infraction, which is a citation. Section 7, the penalties, the amount
Can I ask
of
a
the
question?
fine.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So what's to stop the environmental compliance officer, based on this, from waiting outside the door and 5 minutes later walking back in and issuing a second warning?
There's something in here that says you can't do it more than once a week.
Yeah.
I will find that more. I know
Okay.
it's in there, but I just don't know where it is.
Yeah, no more than one penalty shall be imposed
Is that
on a
where-
business establishment within a
Oh, yeah.
EE day period.
That's EEE, stars EEE, state 30.
Well, no, my concern was that there's no cure period.
That's what,
There's no cure period. In other words, it's kind of like, I mean, I think with the blight ordinance, we say, hey, clean this
Stop
up,
doing that.
stop doing this, and if you don't do it in 30 days, we're gonna throw something else at you.
The value that would be slipped in under the EE.
Yeah, but that's a penalty.
You have it under.
Right, but that's
It could be 30 days.
penalty,
It
though.
could be 30 days.
No, but you don't get my point is you could get a penalty within 5 minutes. You can't pay more than one penalty every month, but you could get, so look, I'm crazy.
John.
If the-
I want
if
you
the
to be
compliance officer
completely
just-
satisfied with that before we move on.
Determines that an additional violation has occurred after the written warning has been issued for the initial violation, citation, infraction imposing the penalty against business establishment.
We're talking about the timeline for them to remedy
Yes.
and remove the bags and get another option.
Yeah. You could,
Versus
I mean,
just
you
paying
could, the environmental compliance officer could walk in at 11 or at 12, give them a warning notice, go have lunch, come back and give another note, and then boom.
If we set this thing for like 7, you can't do that. You can't go take a break, come see me next week.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe what John is saying is first you get a warning, right? And then you could come back at 5 minutes and issue the penalty,
Yeah.
because the warning has no penalty.
Basically,
No,
you
he
get
might be right.
you get 2 strikes.
He might be
Is
Two
that
strikes,
right?
you're out.
Is that right?
Right.
mean, I'm not putting words.
And I'm just like, kind of like, you
Yeah.
should get one strike,
All right,
and then
so
you get a
let's-
cure
let's-
period.
let's-
And I think
if
we
you
should
come back
put
a
that.
week late, it may be,
We
it
should
should
put the
be like
15
a
days.
No more
a
than
week
one.
or a month,
But I-
whatever, I'm
no more
open to
than
what
one
it is.
Well, 15
warning.
days seems reasonable.
But if you get, I mean, this is where, somebody could abuse the,
John, I want to fix it. I want to fix it.
You give
How
someone a
about
badge,
changing the
anything
words,
can
the one warning or citation shall be imposed upon a business established within a 7-day period. The sentence that has the E's, the stars and the E's.
or no, you could say, if the environmental compliance officer determines an additional violation of this ordinance has occurred, or if after 7 days, a minimum of 7 days, the blah, 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 the officer, I'm thinking this.
I could do that, but would you turn the page and look at the top of the next page? Where it says no more than,
Right.
okay, couldn't we just fuss with that sentence? It says penalty, which would be that's the second or third thing. But if it says the warning or citation,
Well, then I would say no penalty
But-
shall be
but-
imposed
but
within
that's
a
your
7-day period of the initial warning, and no penalty, no more than one penalty shall be imposed.
yeah, go fix it. And we'll see what he says.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
think
pin it
this is
down.
clear.
It is now 9 o'clock, and I think we'll be out of here by 15 after. Please.
Oh, no. Sorry. I wake up
Only
at 5,
classic
I'm
guys.
good to leave.
Did you look happy about that?
I'm sorry.
Get a little chocolate in
That's
there.
not gonna
that'll- Get a little chocolate in there.
Tomorrow, we have a wine and Valentine's Day event. we're
Oh,
going
boy.
to.
How's the weather?
I'll wait till tomorrow. Yeah, I know it's supposed to rain, but we'll be inside. Sorry.
Where is your event?
Total Wine. Not meaning to plug, but it's so fun. They're like $5 or something. You have wine tastings. They're great. $5 for a wine tasting on a Friday night. Sign me up.
John is concerned about the environmental officer standing on the sidewalk and going for it. And I thought we had that stopped, or estoppel, but it's really going to be stopped well.
It will be stopped well.
It'll be stopped.
We don't want
You
too
can't
many
have-
police
you
powers.
can't have multiple tickets in one day.
But the selectmen are insisting on not hiring somebody to do this job, correct? We're not getting a hire.
I don't think it's a full-time job.
No,
I don't think it's an hour a week.
especially with the way that,
So what John makes him happy? It's the purpose
What's
of
that?
this.
Some
is to
minutes.
keep Mr. Bolton happy. What he's done is said, no penalty shall be imposed within days of the first warning notice being issued. Reasonable. And no more than one penalty shall be imposed upon a business establishment within a number of days, same amount of days. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I'm less
Is that-
concerned
is
with
that
how
what
many
we got?
times
We
they
got this
get,
phrase.
how many times they get penalized than I am, they should get a cure period.
We've got this phrase as a lead-in to
Yes.
this phrase.
Yes.
Let's go with it. And like most of our topics, most of the interesting topics, we have colleague committees. They aren't looking at the red line. They're looking at the solid line. And this is why we have such interesting discussions, how this thing morphed. We're heading down by my assurance that sections 8, 9, 10 through 15 are text that has been pulled from
These are the selectmen meetings and notes.
ordinances within the town.
The minutes and the
Out of the book.
October
A
15th.
oh,
little bit from here, a little bit from there.
yeah.
So that we address what is the appeal process, which is tied into that hearing cost of the appeal, The person who feels aggrieved if they didn't get properly treated by the hearing officer, they can take it to court. They can go down to Stanford and deal with it the way they can on lots of different things. That seems to be the thing. If you can't settle it in town hall, it's not the end of the world. You can go over to Stanford and argue the case. So this
Thank you.
sets that up.
Thank you.
Exemptions, quite frankly, it is, exemption paragraph is purloined from Stanford. Other towns have like A and B, which is, let's look at A and B. Don't want to violate the laws of the United States or Connecticut. That's a standard paragraph. Then 9B is the SNAP program and
Yeah.
other feed assistance program, feeding, which we may or may not be involved in the future. Vincent, did you happen to bring up SNAP with you when you talked to P2P?
No.
Yeah,
I don't even know how
different
they're involved
communities-
with that.
it's a federal program,
Yeah, I know that,
and to the extent that we're involved in that, I just don't know.
yeah.
And you're just
But I
covering it in
took
case
the
it-
liberty
yeah.
of pulling this paragraph, which I'd seen in a couple different ordinances, and so I put it in here for his good luck. Then the third one,
Governmental feed, does that sound more like farm than,
the SNAP,
no, well, or similar governmental feed assistance.
Yes,
Feed
it's supposed to be food assistance?
That would be food, wouldn't it?
Thank
Feed
you.
sounds a
Thank
little
you,
bit.
Vincent.
Sounds like there's some cattle outside.
Thank you.
oh my gosh. Oh, if we didn't do anything else tonight.
I thought maybe there was some technical term.
Thank you.
It was a typo. and
This
you
is
didn't
known,
read it.
this is known as the good, what we call snake drinking. We will have, over the next couple of weeks, probably some other Lulus, and this is what Papagio, before we submit it over to town council, is to get the little bugaboos out, so that what we submit, we can be proud of. If nonetheless, the material that he submits back to rules to be put on the RTM, that's official.
Yeah.
Our stuff is not official. We're trying to make our best job, but that's goofy things like that.
I mean,
All right, number 10,
Because,
10.
well, the question about SNAP or whatever, SNAP is something that a retail grocer would handle with food stamps, right?
I believe so.
So I don't think person to person would have anything to do with that. But
As we
I'm
go
not
down the
sure.
road here, we've got to find out about this. 'cause
I believe you get a debit card.
You think we'll dump it? Or
Oh.
you think we should leave it in just for,
I'll Google it.
I'm looking for it now, actually.
You are, great.
all right, so next time we meet, somebody will talk intelligently about
No,
what SNAP is.
Google's pretty quick. We can.
Well, you can look it up on Wikipedia.
We'll see if
Would
we
you
can
s-
find out.
All right,
Okay.
I have one
Okay.
question while we're looking things up.
Yeah.
In these other towns that are nearby, Greenwich, Westport, how many citations have been issued? I'd be astounded if Darien, it was like 1 or 2 a year. But I would like to know that, because then we sort of know the effect of what we're trying to do
You
here.
know what happens when people ask good questions like that?
Oh, they get answers?
No, they get
Get
a sign to do it.
I'd be happy to do that.
Funds received.
Yeah.
Rob is correct. They get a debit card to use at a grocery store. So I think we shouldn't include that clause.
Well, so there's some, I mean, this has appeared in at least 2 other towns.
Well,
That
you
particular
know what,
paragraph.
Heather, here's my question to
And
you.
they don't want to run afoul.
If you're a
of the-
SNAP recipient
Yeah.
and you go and you purchase your items with your debit card,
At a grocery store in
At Stop
Darien,
and
they
Shop.
wouldn't have a plastic bag
they
anyway.
probably wouldn't, but could they use one?
If they brought it, yes.
No, but could they give you one?
No, because the retailer themselves is not allowed to
But
do
they
it.
can't, they also, but you can't get it in a
Can you
paper
give
bag
them a-
because they can't charge you because it won't go through on your SNAP card.
Right.
Then you may need a waiver for the environmental charge.
From the federal government?
No. In other words, the merchant can waive the
Ah.
environmental is,
We haven't
Or
given
is-
them the authority to do that.
They're not allowed to do
or
it.
not allowed to, no, they're told to. They're not gonna waive it.
Well,
if we
right,
don't
I
tell
mean,
them
I
to.
don't want to, that would make this even more
Understood.
complex. And I don't think it's going to be an issue. I'm getting a little punchy here.
That's because we're going to get this thing, we're going to get it done here.
Yes.
Paragraph C here has, is, what do they call it, art form? This is a
You'll like it, it's
paragraph
your
that
fault.
was
It's your job.
crafted in Stamford, where you will recall that the Stamford Town Council called to attention that it could be a tax, and is concerned about litigation. So this section helps to address that, saying that it's proper until contrary is established. The burden of proof shall be upon the person so claiming. So I don't think I understand the implications of this paragraph, but I do know that it was placed to help the situation around. And as we go down the road, I'm sure that town council will have some comment on this, because he knows that paragraph is there, and he may choose to fiddle with it even further to provide the protections that he would like us to have. Section 10 doesn't have to be there. However, the template we received had a suggestion that the funds received be plowed back into an environmental group for further education, a special fund. Within the last couple of years in Darien, there's been a move, and rightly so, to not create little special funds for things, but have it go into the general fund. So paragraph 10 there is to head off further discussion of that. It will go in. And we probably will receive $150 in totality.
That's what I'm
And that
thinking.
go into the general fund. Thank you
Okay.
very much. So that's just there. Appeal process over in Stamford is paragraph 11.
I like the annual report, that's good.
Yeah, it's probably a good government, best practices, because you can settle this up and the people in the RTM will pop up and say, well, what happened? You know, what happened to the school cafeteria project?
No, it's good.
What happened to so a report is probably a good thing. The standards.
I think it's particularly true if you're not going to have a town employee
And
doing
the
it.
effective date, these are other standard paragraphs that.
What about this last one that got crossed
sorry?
out? The one that got crossed out before we flipped the page?
Oh.
Was there any?
Did I skip a page?
No, before we flipped the, you were
Oh, yeah,
already on
yeah, yeah.
effective date, so before you flipped the page,
Gotcha.
it was crossed out and it mentions anyone that's purchased a supply or has a contract for purchase of non-compliant bags.
Yes, the enforcement part. Right? Effective date?
No. The effective date paragraph.
Yes.
But the section about
No, we're not
non-compliant
skipping
bags.
that. We're not skipping that.
Okay.
Many of the ones, I was surprised that the New Canaan draft ordinance is 3 months. And when I looked at some of the other ordinances, I always thought the 6 months was a standard and it's sort of polite. But a couple of them come up and say, well, we're going to get this in at 3. So again, not wanting to get tied down to argue about that number, we just left that as a starred number that people can discuss and come forward. What is new about this is the grace period afforded to the merchants to use up their supplies. So if they have some non-compliant bags on hand, when the legislation goes in, fine, use them up by a certain date, maybe say a year or another 6 months or whatever. But at least there's a nod towards that. So somebody jumps up and down saying, oh, this is going to cost me terribly. I'm going to have to throw my bags away. Not so much, we'll get there. It's sort of an accommodation. But the actual values we want to drop into those slots we can be advised by our colleagues on that as to what they think we should do. And what is, by the way, what do we think? How many months should it take to implement this?
I would,
Don't all answer at once.
I don't know.
I think
6
6 and
months?
6 is fine.
Okay.
I don't even think you need the bags on hand. 6 months.
Before they go through your inventory.
Just 6 months.
There's I was saying about putting 6 months in here, and then others will argue when this comes to the fore, put a date in there so people can.
Well, I would have-
6 months from
But if we put this on the floor and we know we're gonna
With a
vote
date.
on it
With a
May 1st, it'll be
6 months. from
6 months from then,
Yeah,
November
that-
1st.
that plug that date
We'll
in,
just
so
put it
that,
in, that's easy.
Because, yes, because when you go through the legislation and the old stuff, they'll say 1 year from this effective date, then you're going to look for the effective date. Now, one of the things that we went through the ordinances a couple of years ago and got out all the hard-coded fees and fines. Buried at page 200 of that book would be the parking ticket is such and such an amount. What we did at that point was to go through, and I think we picked out about 20 different things. And so this, we're not going to do that again. So in this stage, we have a placeholder that refers you back to the table at the end, Appendix D, which, when you look at Appendix D, has about 20 different things listed on it. This, the amendment, whether you do that night, would be to put this into the book of ordinances, and oh, by the way, amend section B, so it will count as mine. And you will again notice that the $2 amounts, which were $150 and $250, we leave them blank, but let the good times roll, to let people advise us as to what those numbers are. Does anybody have an opinion about what those numbers ought to be? Given the fact that we'll probably issue one citation.
I don't even know how much a parking ticket is in town. I've never got one.
You're blessed. You've really been
I really don't.
charmed
I
life.
don't park in no parking places. How much is a parking ticket in town?
$15?
15?
Unless you don't pay it.
Okay.
It's not like New York where,
$15?
I don't know, my wife had one about 5 years ago.
Really? Throw her under the bus.
I did.
Sorry, Laura. He apologized.
50, 100, 200? 50 first offense?
Oh, I would start 100.
100, okay.
You gotta make it so that smack them in the face.
Okay.
If you're gonna have it, smack them in the
Okay.
face.
All right. 100, 200, 500? You like that?
Well, let's think in terms
Remember,
of,
She got you.
let's think in
She got
terms of what's the cost benefit to them of breaking it. If you make it, it's kind of like, if you make it so that it's $5, then they're gonna be like, well, who cares,
Every 7 days.
party on. If you make it punitive, then it's kind of unfair. I mean, you gotta make it so that it's not worth their while to mess around with.
I
That's all.
suspect if they're cavalier about the law, the bring your own bag group will be outside picketing that store every day.
Stop.
Power to him.
Not gonna go there.
Big signs.
Yeah.
You guys are terrific. You've got it hung in there for the page-by-page stuff. Where we're left with item number 6, which brings up the discussion of what we do next. Timeline for next steps in the development of your bag ordinance.
I have one question about that, Frank. Is it possible or feasible that this gets done it's in front of the RTM before the summer? It's February.
Yes.
Okay.
I had always said that we'd like to have this on the floor of the RTM in March. I'm kind of looking at the schedule. I don't think that can happen. So if not March, then when? Well, it depends on how fast things go along and some other external factors, which I will address in a moment. Our regular meetings are set up for 1 week after a rules committee meeting. So like a rules, I said something for two, then we get together. Rules meets 2 weeks before an RTM meeting. So our meetings are right in the middle. Rules meets on Monday night. Coming. So that would be, I don't have the schedule with it, but our regularly scheduled meeting would be like a week and a day after that. Tuesday night, the
19th.
something.
We meet on the 19th.
It remains to be seen at this point, but we have work to do, and we also have to listen to our colleagues. It remains to be seen as to whether we should have that meeting, or just cancel it and schedule up a special meeting when we need to. I'm leaning towards canceling that, but I'd like to hear what Public Works did tonight. I'd also like to hear what Public Health and Safety does on Monday night, and then advise us as to whether we're going to meet on that Tuesday or not.
The other issue you got is that school vacation week.
Say again.
School vacation week.
I have to take that.
And I can tell you right
We
now,
need to
I
take
will
that
not
in-
be available the
We
19th.
need to take that into consideration.
I got a business
I think
dinner in New
I
Jersey
think
that
that is
night.
school vacation week.
It is school vacation.
So it's another good argument for canceling it. I'm not canceling it right now, I'll
Right.
wait. But then in the next, to give us adequate time to say, what comes with the sweet with the bitter, does argue that we would call a special meeting sometime when we have material to work on or things to discuss and sort out.
The other thing is that the public hearing is technically open until March 1st.
The public comments, yes, yes, the public comments are certainly accepted. So the general sequence of events without dates is that the model legislation is tuned up based on peer review. It should go to a Rules Committee meeting, which is next Rules Committee is March 4th. I think a reasonable target would be to have us present to Rules on March 4th a reasonable text, which then Rules can then send off to the attorney. The attorney sends it back, and it goes to the floor. So that's just a general. The newspaper reporters called this afternoon to find out what we were doing, and that's the way I described it to them. It's not set in stone, because it's rare that a complex piece of legislation like this comes up. But usually we're doing things that are more channeled, like approving union contracts. Well, it's a very complicated thing, but it's all been hashed out ahead of time before it comes to RTM. So there really isn't a playbook for how we're doing this. It seems to be a reasonable course of events.
So then we would need to get all the feedback from the two committees probably before vacation week.
That'd be a good idea.
I mean,
And
realistically, to make
by
that.
the way, once it comes back from the attorney, counsel, it can go directly to the RTM right there. That's because it's a change in an ordinance, it does not have to have a public hearing. There are some among us who argue for having another public hearing. Because at that public hearing, there'll be something that they can sink their teeth into. And that way, our colleagues of RTM members, in theory, will be at that public hearing to hear what the public says, how they should vote, or what they, not how they should vote, but what they should take into consideration when they vote, because you vote your own conscience. But it's informed as a representative. So if it came back from the attorney and went right to the floor, I think we might have a train wreck. There we are.
Good idea.
Does public health and safety have to work on this?
So again,
Is public health and safety?
public health is on Monday night, Rules Committee Monday night, but there's no
Oh, they have a Monday night meeting because it's
There's
not
no-
on the, it's not on the calendar, that's why.
there's no cross bleed between the rules is rules and the health and safety is separate. I'd like to stop in on public health and safety just to say hello. Okay. So all these meetings are public meetings. We had a visitor here. In the future we would have visitors dropping in to see it. And we might have. I think a joint meeting would be good. It's kind of like herding cats. It's got to be done. Now, there was also the item is adjournment. Once we adjourn, we are subject to the Freedom of Information acts and suggestions, so we can't really discuss things except in a meeting. So after we adjourn, everybody heads home.
Oh, but we shouldn't adjourn.
So no more emails?
A motion to adjourn?
A motion.
Have your last.
Can we
Second.
discuss that?
Would everybody vote by rising? Thank you
You said